Hello and welcome to ICI Solution. My name is Abdul Shah, and in today's editorial explain session, we are going to see an article which might be written by a political person, but we will find out what all non-political things that are written in the article in today's editorial of the Hindu and important for our UPSC exam. The title of the article is The Crack Beneath the Peddled Story of India's Growth. The same article has been contemplated into the making of our content, the same title. Now, the first thing aspirant wonders after seeing an article is that where it is going to help me. The article is going to help me in GS paper 3 economy. In times when I need to point out the challenges faced by the economy. Keeping in mind, we have formed a mains model question also so that you can better relate to it. The question goes, despite being one of the fastest growing major economies, India continues to face significant structural economic challenges. Examine the major vulnerabilities in India's growth model and suggest measures for building a resilient and inclusive economy. 15 marks. Keeping the question in mind, now let's jump directly into the content so as to get the holistic picture of the article. The first would be why in news. It is in news because India's high GDP growth is been prominent now, but it is not alone. It is somewhere accompanied by by some structural vulnerabilities that threatens the long-term economic resilience of the country. At the same point of time, the author of the article somewhere points out that our over dependency on external sector, external aspect or rest of India, come with that weak manufacturing and employment challenges, keeping in mind the technological gap, which is the major concerns of today's economy in the so-called uncertain world. Okay, we get it. The key, what is the news all about? Now let's see in a very small part what are the indicators that the author had mentioned here so as to draw his conclusion. The first is India imports nearly 90% of its crude oil requirement was the data which he points out. The second is around 50% of natural gas demand is met through import. At the same point of time, the author points out that RBI has sold over around $53 billion to somewhere stabilize the rupee in the previous years of 2020, 2025 to 2026. At the same point of time, the current Forex reserve of RBI is around $681 billion. The next is India receives around $135 billion remittances during previous financial year, that is previous to previous financial year, that is 2024-25, and FPIs have eventually withdrew nearly around 2.2 lakh crores from Indian markets. Now, all these data does not point anything. Data alone cannot point anything, but it requires some perception to it. Therefore, the author points out certain major challenges associated with the current state of economy. The first is from the data, he points out that there is high external dependency of India. India remains heavily dependent on imported energy, fertilizer, semiconductor, and advanced technologies. At the same point of time, due to global disruption, this can trigger inflation, currency depreciation, and supply chain shock. From that, the author also points out that there is energy security challenges faced by the country. Because of heavy dependency on import of oil and gases, India is somewhere exposed to global price volatility. A minute change in any price in the global market can affect India adversely, and rising energy prices somewhere widens the trade deficit and increase the production cost by India. At the same point of time, from the data, author identifies that there is agricultural vulnerability in place because we are again fertilizer dependent. Fertilizer production somewhere depend heavily on input of all that 90% of energy linking to LP, LNG and potash. At the same point of time, the situation aggravates because of weak monsoon and costly import of farm incomes that will again fuel the food inflation. That will have an effect on weak rural safety net. Now, what does he want to point out? He's somewhere pointing out that because of all these weak monsoon and inflation, there will be weakening of rural employment programs, which will again increase the economic insecurity and uncertainty in the rural India. As well as because of declining rural income, it will suppress the consumption and domestic demand. At one side, there is lack of production, there is other side suppress of consumption and domestic demand. And because of external sector risks, we see India's external balance somewhere heavily rely on the remittances. We have seen that in the data point and service export, which again AI will disruption in all the advanced economy and anti-migration immigration policies by all the leading economies in the world may weaken the future remittances flow the India which is getting now, which will affect the capital flow volatility, which will supplement the capital flow volatility. Large FPI outflow highlights the dependency on volatile foreign currency, because when there is uncertainty over those advanced economy, we will get to see outflow of FPI. There would be sudden capital withdrawal, increase in the financial market instability, and not to forget, there is also technological gap in place where India remains mostly dependent on imported semiconductors and advanced technology. Therefore, limited capabilities in AI and frontier technology will reduce the global competitiveness of India. Keeping in mind, if we now see the manufacturing underperformance related to this aspect, the author strategically points out that manufacturing has not generated the expected employment or export growth it was expected to have because of limited industrial competitiveness within the country and constrained Indian manufacturing ambition in place, which is directly or indirectly affecting to the last challenge of the part, which the author categorically point out is the employment challenge, which is also can be related with the rural India also. We see India's demographic dividend remain underutilized due to insufficient job qualities because of non-ambitious certain sector and unable to absorb them. And informal employment and stagnant wages continue to dominate the labor market, which will again affect the consumption pattern. These were the challenges which the author categorically points out. But at the same point of time, the author does not stop himself to the challenges only. He goes on to point out some opportunities for the sustainable growth. What are the opportunities that the author sees in today's term? The first is it sees that there is need for strengthening domestic manufacturing, where expand advanced manufacturing to improve global competitiveness and reduce import dependency through domestic production. The next, he points out that there should be accelerated energy transition, where increased renewable energy capacity and clean energy should be adopted because of heavy dependence on the energy sector, 90%, and promote green hydrogen and energy storage for long security, keeping in mind the sustainable use of. He also says that the achieve or technological leadership, we need not to only follow the innovations made by the first world, but we should also take an advanced part in that. We should also innovate. We should also invest in AI, semiconductor, robotics, and advanced manufacturing, which are in news currently, which will again strengthen our research, innovation, and industry academia collaboration. The next he says we should also develop human capital, because again employability depends on how better we have human capital in place. He points out that there should be improved education, sorry, there should be improved education, skilling, and digital capabilities in place. At the same point of time, he points out that there should be increased investment in research and innovations also. And to revive the rural demand, he points out that we should strengthen the rural employment programs and infrastructure and enhance agricultural productivity and farmers' income. And the last thing he points out is the to diversify somewhere the external sector, to promote high value manufacturing export beyond the IT sector, which is our forte. But due to stagnation or saturation of that sector, we should have a high value manufacturing export leg, which is beyond the IT sector, IT services, and we should diversify export market to improve the external resilience. Now, this is where our content comes into play. We have seen the author or the publisher has somewhere pointed out what are the steps to be taken, or what that this point should be kept in mind. But how to achieve those points is a specialization of rice IS. We find we somewhere categorically points out what how should we achieve all those points which are being said by the author. The first would be to strengthen energy security. We should expand the renewable energy and domestic exploration in peace. A solution oriented answer. It will reduce the dependency on imported fossil fuels. Next, when the author tries on to say that we should have invest on innovating new technologies, we should have promote high tech manufacturing. We should build domestic semiconductor and electronic industries and encourage the indigenous innovation through higher R&D investment. The next is invest in human capital. The author points out, but how? It should be by enhanced education, skilling, and workforce productivity. It will strengthen the again industry university partnership. The next is revive the rural economy. How? Again the question here we categorically points out improve MGNREGA, which is now not in place, but VVG Ramji, which is now in place, implementation of rural infrastructure, and promote agriculture diversification and rural enterprises. The next is improve investment climate. How? Again the same question, through ensuring regulatory certainty and policy stability in the country, and attract long-term domestic foreign investment, so that this short-term FPI do not go out of the country. And at last, excuse me, when we say build external resilience, how? Again diversify energy sources and export destination, and strengthen the forex reserve and current account stability. See, there is a subtle difference between which the authors point out in the part where we see the opportunity for sustainable growth, and through way forward we see how do we achieve those goals, from challenges to opportunities to way forward. Now the conclusion, when we have drawn the solution, how to achieve those solution, when now comes the conclusion to conclude the answer. So the conclusion should again replicate the whole body that we have written in the answer. The conclusion can look like this, where India's journey towards the goal of Viksit Bharat in 2047 will depend not only on rapid economic growth, but also building a resilient, innovation driven, and employment intensive and globally competitive economy, because situation might come like this which will be adversary to our condition. Keeping that also in mind, we should not only develop, but we should sustainably develop to somewhere make changes into our system. With that, I would conclude today's session. I hope this session was indeed helpful for your preparation. And if you feel so, I would like you to like this video and subscribe to Rice IS YouTube channel. And yes, those who are wondering from where you can get this PDF, the article PDF, the PDF is freely available in Rice IS website in absolutely free terms again. With that, I would again thank you all for joining the session. I hope you are preparing well.